So, you're a business owner dedicated to the significant and sustainable growth of both you and your business. Welcome to the Add a Zero podcast.
Hi, I'm Jay Allen from My True North. Welcome to the Add a Zero podcast, and today we're talking about the seesaw within each business. What? I'm not talking about the table tennis table in the corner of the office, or the comfy chairs, or the slides to be able to be creative and hip. I'm talking about understanding that for every time that we grow in the business, it brings a new level of consideration. I've been a guest speaker either on big conferences and stage around the world, or in in-house events, being able to do comms days and the likes for the last 10 or 11 years or so. And every single time I communicate with a new audience, it's important to be able to understand as to who's in the audience and how are they receiving the information. I was fortunate enough to receive some speaker training 10, 12, 13 years ago now when I first entered that profession. And there was a lovely quote given by my coach that said, it's not about the words that you speak. You have to be conscious all the time of the audience that you are speaking into. You need to understand the level of competency and understanding of the audience before you communicate, so you're able to resonate with them at their level. And so each time I go and speak at a different event, I'm often looking at the audience. I usually arrive early. I listen to what other people have got to say. I'll have those water cooler conversations to understand as to who's in the audience. And then I can almost split the audience into 3 different segments, particularly when the business owners like yourself. Unfortunately, it's not an equal split. I would say in each audience that I've spoken to in 30 odd countries around the world, spanning almost 500,000 people now, that about 40 to 45% of them are there for personal, professional development. They're the ones that have got a notepad. They might be recording the session. They might audio or video record it. They've got a pad and pen out. They're copiously making lots of notes. They are heavily involved in the session. They're likely to be asking questions. They're likely to be reviewing and revising everything that they've written in notes. They are the education advocates. They are there for their personal development. And I can almost guarantee that if I go back to their offices, the walls will be adorned with many a certificate. If I look on their website, there'll be lots of accreditations with regards to what they've achieved and the governing bodies of which they're now party to. They are on a mission to be able to be as highly educated and learned as possible. If I look at their business plan and their projections, if I look at their monthly management accounts and their end of year returns for the last 2 or 3 years, invariably, unfortunately, it doesn't show the same level of growth. You see that about 40 to 45% of the audiences that I've spoken with or to are so evolved in personal development that they haven't got time to fully implement everything is that we've been taught before they're on the next course and the next training and they're moving on to the next thing. They are growing faster than their business, and the seesaw is wildly in the favour of personal development at the expense of business evolution. There's another camp, interestingly, about 40 to 45% of the audience also, that invariably, particularly if it's a multi-speaker event, might not be there for the entire 2 or 3 days. They might arrive late, they might leave early, they might have paid for a ticket for the entire event and only turned up for 1 or 2 speakers, and they're in, they're done, they're out. They haven't got time for personal development. They're busy running the business. I had a meeting this morning that I couldn't get out of. I've got to get back because somebody's got to lock up. There's so many other things that are on my plate that I want to be doing personal development, but it's got to be fit in around my business. You can usually measure those by the people that have bought a seat and then don't turn up. They had every intent of being there, but something else got in the way. Something was a higher priority. The business comes first. I had a phone call on the way down here and I had to turn round. They're the ones that'll turn around and say, was it recorded? Can you send me a copy? I'll watch it later, and then never do. If I go into their business, I'll probably find that they've got all the right kit and equipment. They're probably subscribing to all of the right softwares that could make a bigger difference. But the chances are that it's being ill-used. It might even be still sat in the box in a corner somewhere because it's not had the opportunity to be set up. And if it has, they've probably not received the training required in order to be able to utilise it all. They've got all the kit and equipment, as we used to say in the military, all the gear and no idea. And about 40 to 45% of the audience are likely to fit into that camp also. There's a thin sliver of people in the audience. In my experience to date, that mass about 10% of the audience. They're the ones that arrive on time, that listen intently to everything that's being said, that may attend 70 or 80% of the event, but on occasion step out, only to then later step back in again. But usually the ones that have booked an additional day after the conference before going home. They're the ones that you tend to find hanging around at the bar after the conference is over. Why? Because they've come with a specific agenda. They've come to determine as to what do they need to learn now that they can implement now that'll have the biggest impact, knowing full well that in a year's time they may come back to the same conference and listen to the same speakers, but come with a different agenda of what do they now need to learn now in order to move to the next level. Their seesaw isn't in one favour or the other. They found balance and understand that for every new level in business, there's a new devil of conflict and challenges that we all face. Whether you're a startup and you're learning how to be able to make your first few £1,000s a month, whether you're a more established business and how to be able to really grow and expand that to be able to have regular multi-six-figure income business with systems and strategies and people, whether you're a larger business with teams and departments and multi-seven-figure business and beyond. Every time that we step into a new level of business, there's a new level of complexity that we are faced to challenge. And our job as a business owner is to not get bogged down in the detail of doing, the busyness of business, but to understand that we have to be able to step up into that new level and to embrace the new challenges that we face. I've said in previous podcasts, and you'll probably hear me say again after today, that our job is change management agents. We have to be able to move from problems to solution. And the blessing of being able to fix today's problem is that we are quicker to fix it when we are faced with it tomorrow, which will give us some more times to embrace and new problems to face. And the trick is to be able to say, what do I need to learn now to address the problems that I face today that enable me to be able to move the needle forward and then embrace a new set of problems that brings. And I often look at businesses and compare them perhaps with the size of business and the size of problem that we face. Let me give you a quick example. I genuinely believe that the first 25, 30, perhaps 35,000 a year in revenue is the most difficult to be able to generate in any new business. Moving into a new business, starting from scratch with zero income and zero investment, bootstrapping it from day one. The first 35,000 generated every year is the most challenging in the whole business growth life cycle. Everything's new. Everything's from scratch. I haven't got any money to be able to invest in kit and equipment and marketing and sales and people. I've got to wear multiple hats all the time and be willing to be able to win the work, do the work, win the work, do the work. And as a result of that, it becomes challenging, both physically and mentally. As we get to the 35,000 regular income phase, moving from there to the VAT threshold of about 90,000 is a lot easier. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's a lot easier than it was to be able to generate that first 30. By this time, we've started to see some patterns. If I do this, this happens. If I don't do this, this happens. We can start to be able to analyse the things that we did for the first 30,000 and then replicate that in a lot more quicker successions to be able to move the needle quicker and further forward. And by the time we get to about 90 or 100,000, usually about the same sort of size as the VAT threshold at present, we start to embrace a new problem. I've done some marketing, I've done some sales, I'm fulfilling that work myself, I'm a solopreneur, everything's going well, but when I stop, it stops. And if I'm not available for work, there's no income. I've got to find somebody else. And it's usually at around as we move into six figures that we start looking for that additional support mechanism, that further person in the business that can continue to keep the wheels moving forward if we're not in or available. That when the going's good and there's two people earning an income, but when I'm unavailable or don't want to work 7 days a week, then there's somebody else to be able to hold the mantle and move things further forward. And that should get us continuing to be able to implement the same strategies that I've spoken of previously, the marketing, the sales, the operations, and the team. That should be able to enable us to be able to move from about the 100,000 mark through to around the 250,000 mark. Either one or two, or we start to build a small team of replicables and we continue to push the needle forward. And you get to around 250, 300,000 turnover and you embrace a new problem. It's either the kit and equipment that we started with is no longer fit for service, or we're running out of kit and equipment because we've got too much demand, or we can't continue to operate from the rented room in a shared office any longer. We need some space to be able to call our own and to be able to move. We're presented with a new set of challenges. And that's going to see us through that 300,000 revenue mark. Once we've fixed it and we've reinvested in our kit and equipment and a building and space for ourselves, once we've got some more training for the people that we've brought into the business, being able to expand that and accelerate the growth from 3 to 5 to 7 or 750,000 becomes the next accelerator. And by the time you get to the high end of multi-six, just prior to 7-figure revenue, we hit a new problem, a new challenge, a new level, a new devil. And so it goes on and on and on and on. And it doesn't matter how big the business becomes, the same challenges that we face again and again and again at a different level of complexity. In the last month or so, I've had 2 clients, almost back-to-back calls from the far ends of that spectrum. One client is a multi-8-figure business, not yet working at 9-figure level, but a multi-8-figure business with 116 staff and offices in 3 locations, 2 in the UK and 1 abroad. The other is a relatively new startup that's just taken on their 2nd member of staff. And in the session that we had less than a month ago, both business owners had the same problem. The smaller of the businesses had a problem with a new member of staff. They've just come to the end of the probationary period, and there's a little bit of uncertainty as to whether they've fully involved and enveloped everything that it is around the business, as to whether we've got to extend the probationary period or possibly say, I'm sorry, but I don't think that this has worked out, or whether there's the need for some more guidance and support moving forward before we set a really rigid set of performance indicators for them for the first 12 months in business. But there's an employment issue with a new member of staff. And yet we go to the other end of the scale, the other client, probably 2 hours later on another Zoom call, currently at about 70 million revenue, looking to try and work towards 100 million revenue over the next 12, 24 months. And they've bought a new business. They have an existing business, and they recognise the opportunity of being able to buy out a small part of their supply chains to be able to have in-house what they previously used to buy externally. And there's a great cost advantage to being able to have this company in-house, to be able to do the work at cost, and to continue to allow them to be able to trade commercially as well with their existing other previous clients. They've involved and enveloped. They've done mergers and acquisitions and brought a small new business into their empire. And yet, that business, 7 members of staff, have a completely different work ethic and cultural values to those in the main business. And it's causing a real friction with regards to, well, how come they can and we can't? How come they have to and we do? It's the same problem. It's just a different level of complexity. The simple fact is that we're only able to address this if the business owner spends as much time understanding how they grow and evolve to be able to own a bigger, more complex business, and then implement the things that have been taught to them into the business to see it evolve. So my question is simple. Where do you sit in that audience? Are you the 45% of people that are certificate gatherers and badge collectors? Do you spend too much time on your own personal development and not enough time implementing all of the things that you've learned? Or are you listening to this podcast while you're busy out for a run or feeding the kids or working somewhere else or on a run? Or have you got so many other things that are on the go that you're listening, but the business isn't evolving as a result of it? Are you spending so much time doing the doing that you haven't got time to be able to pick up? Are you only listening to this on double the speed because I haven't got a chance? Or are you that 10% that will make such a huge difference next year by saying, what can I take from today's episode that I can implement into my business tomorrow and starts to see a benefit? What's the one nugget that you can take from today and implement tomorrow to be able to have a better impact and help you support the growth between where you are now and where you want to be? My goal is to be able to help and support you and many other people to be able to add a zero. And the only way we can do that collectively is to listen, to learn, to share, and to implement. God bless, take care. I look forward to speaking to you again next week. But in the meantime, drop me an email at podcast@mytruenorth.biz and let me know what you got from today's episode. See you soon.
That's all for this episode. As always, we really thank you for listening and welcome your comments, thoughts, and suggestions. So please do drop us a line by emailing podcast@mytruenorth.biz. And don't forget, if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button on whichever platform you're listening to this through. And tell your colleagues and business network all about who we are. You've been listening to the Add a Zero podcast presented by Jay Allen. Brought to you in association with My True North, the UK's leading ethical coaching company.